it's interesting in the world of finance. We always worry about gas prices. It's the most advertised thing. That's a great indicator of how our economy is going because we see so many gas stations and the signs that advertise what the gas is. We see it go up, we get nervous. We see it go down, we get happy. And OPEC Plus, it's no longer OPEC, but OPEC Plus announced production cuts in April, going to go into effect this month. And it could push oil prices towards $100 a barrel. And joining me on the show this morning is Scott Angelle. He is the longest-serving director of the U.S. Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement and founder of USA Energy Workers, and joins the show to talk about energy independence and the like. Good morning, Scott. How are you?
Good morning, Scott. It's so good to be joining Cincinnati, folks. We believe that Cincinnati Bengals is kind of LSU North when you take a Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Thaddeus Moss, Tyler Shelvin, and for your old timers, if we kind of go back, a good name, Tommy Casanova from LSU there. So, yeah, Cincinnati is on Louisiana's mind all day, every day.
All right, so you're a good Cajun boy we're talking to this morning. I got you. And there's a great connection between NOLA and Cincinnati, Ohio now.
Right, great. When you think of the Buckeye State, the 17th great state of the Union, and I'm coming to you live from the 18th great state of the Union. So just amazing. And as your introduction, look, it's really, really unfortunate. It's an unforced era that we're having to deal with in America right now with these incredibly high energy prices. And the facts are pretty clear, Scott. We've had 6 recessions from 1973 to 2019 in this country. And each one of those recessions were preceded by a spike in energy prices. In a lot of ways, as goes America's access to affordable, not cheap, not expensive, but affordable energy, so goes our economic performance. And in Ohio, you would be particularly interested in knowing that, we sell more cars when we have affordable energy. We build more homes when we have affordable energy. Our retail, our travel, and our leisure sectors are more robust. And in a lot of ways, we believe that what happens at the USA Energy Workers, which is an organization that I just launched to basically elevate and celebrate the contributions of our energy workers. In a lot of ways, we believe that the UAW, the United Auto Workers, are linked to the efforts of our USA Energy Workers because, again, the facts are very clear that we do have more robust energy, more robust car sales when we have more robust domestic production. And it was really odd and unusual, we believe, awkward, we believe perhaps nefarious for this administration to pause and cancel offshore and onshore lease sales on public lands, and then at the same time ask OPEC to increase production. That's just very, very unusual because, we've all heard of global warming, not USA warming. Mm-hmm. So in the name of the environment, our public policy in America is to pause and cancel lease sales on public land and then ask OPEC, which the environmental record of OPEC is much worse than the USA. So it's very unusual that in the name of the environment, we would be asking countries that don't share our values,
no question,
don't share our appreciation of life, right?
Yeah, no question. I think it's also interesting, too. Now we're seeing gas prices go down a little. I think that has to do with the Chinese economy softening, which is maybe it's not good for us, but as an enemy, it's kind of good, right? So their economy softens. There's less demand, supply. The price is going to go down. But I think the interesting element of this thing, too, and whether this is American gas or whatever, is that India just surpassed China as the most populous nation on the face of the earth. And India gets an increasingly higher number of barrels of oil from the Russians as opposed to Saudi Arabia and the like, too. I know it's through OPEC and OPEC Plus, but they're using a lot more Russian oil. What does that do then for the overall global scheme relative to oil production and cost here in America?
Anytime we force countries across the globe to turn to Russia, we make the planet less safe. And we believe that all we have to do is take a page out of the American farmers' playbook. When we take a look at what our American farmers have done on the strength of their work ethic and their contributions, our American farmers feed the world. And every time we do that, we export democracy, we export freedom of religion, freedom of press, all the kind of things that are very important to us. We believe that at USA Energy Workers, we have the opportunity to not only feed the world, but to fuel the world and make Russia less important, right? And so you talk about, prices have come down a little bit, and that's true. They're still too high, and I think there's a lot of pain at the pump. And the main reason I think they're coming down is you cited one of them is the China issue, but also we need to look inside here in America. We've been on this rapid historical pace to increase interest rates, and raising interest rates are slowing down this economy. And when you slow down the economy, obviously you have a slower demand for energy, which then, obviously supply-demand equation starts to kick in. But again, at USA Energy Workers, we believe that about 40% of the inflation that we are experiencing in this country is coming from energy, what we call energy inflation. So we believe the solution is not to increase interest rates, rather it should be to increase domestic production. And again, when we increase domestic production, we do that in a more environmentally correct way, and there's so many more benefits to that. Your listeners would be interested in knowing that the Gulf of Mexico, where 1 in every 7 barrels of oil is produced in America, has the second lowest carbon intensity production on the planet, and among the lowest areas of venting and flaring methane. And with the experts tell us, the scientists tell us that the two things that drive climate change are carbon dioxide and methane. And in the Gulf of Mexico, those metrics are the top of the class. And so we don't understand why, in the name of the environment, this administration again would put American workers on the bench and ask for OPEC workers to produce more. It's not fair. It's poor public policy. It's not good for the planet, and it's not good for the families, right? I mean, the number one issue in America right now, if you poll people, is inflation. And, I can assure you that somebody at the White House that gets up every day to check on two things is the price of gas and the price of milk. It's not China and Russia.
Right. But you're beholden to the environmentalist class that doesn't get it. They don't want to acknowledge that, okay, well, if we do not produce our own energy in America, look what happened with Russia in Germany, for example, where they had to rebuild quickly, mind you, coal plants in order to sustain energy for Germany because they're getting a pipeline from Russia. So they had to come up with a plan B, which is actually worse. And you're telling us, which makes sense, OPEC doesn't really care that much about environmental controls that we have here in the United States. It's better for the environment and obviously better for our country and our economy to produce the oil here in the United States. Now, for some reason, we think that it's absolutely tearing our landscape up and our environment, and there's going to be no land left. There's going to be holes all over the place. It's just terrible. But if anyone's flown in an airplane over the United States, as I have, but also from places to Cincinnati to New Orleans, where you are, Scott, you look and there's a lot of green space out there. I'm not saying we should decimate it all and harvest everything off the land, but there's a lot of green space left in America, and there's certainly a lot of empty space in the ocean. We got to be careful. Right. We got to be good stewards of it. But everything you said makes sense.
Well, we have to be good stewards, no doubt. I mean, we love our woods and waters here in Louisiana, and we need to be good stewards. And I think the point that you're making is spot on. And a couple of things I think that come to mind is candidate Biden said in March of 2020 that on day one he would shut down domestic oil and gas drilling. And then 7 days after he took the oath of office, he began to issue executive orders pausing and canceling lease sales, which on public lands for oil and gas development. And not long after that, you begin to see the price start moving. And then yet at his State of the Union address that he gave here recently, there was a little pivot there. He admitted, he said, we are going to need oil for the next decade and beyond. So at least there was a recognition. Now, we haven't seen the policies that follow that recognition. In the meantime, we still have pain at the pump, and we still have, senior citizens who are paying too much for their monthly utility bills. But I thought the CEO of BP, who does a good job, said it best. He said there was a headline recently that concluded that more oil and gas investment is good for the climate fight. And the article went on to say, this is an article that appeared in February. I'll email it to you so you can post it so folks, your listeners can have it. But the article went on to say that reducing supply, and that's what we're doing, without a corresponding reduction in demand will lead to price spikes. Price spikes lead to economic volatility, and volatility usurps the support for energy transition. So in a lot of really, really odd ways, we need to make certain that the energy workhorse The Gulf of Mexico is part of the equation for America. It's owned by the American people. It's available for production. It's available for helping tame inflation, to reduce pain at the pump, and to create jobs. And the one thing you may be particularly interested in is that much of the revenue that the federal government gets from offshore royalties goes to fund what is called the Great American Outdoors Act, which is the greatest bipartisan conservation legislation in over 50 years, funding our national parks, our wildlife refuges, and our United States forests.
Scott, Angelle, you brought up something interesting. I was a baby then. I don't know how old you are, but we're 50 years now. 1973 is when the Saudis and OPEC got together and said, you know what, we're tired of America controlling our price of oil and what they're going to pay us. We're going to form a cartel and stick it to the United States and other developed nations, Canada, everyone else, right? And so they issued the embargo because we supported Israel during the Yom Kippur War and said, okay, we're going to turn the screws on you. But also what happened was, you mentioned the UAW, it's interesting that Detroit was building big cars back then. And didn't see this coming. There were a couple of smart people that said it's coming, and they're going to take control of the oil, and they're going to screw us. And Detroit didn't listen because, well, you had executives there, and this is pretty typical of companies. They'll continue to do what was successful yesterday and not look forward and be a change agent. And what happened was they got caught with their pants down. It led to the decimation of the UAW. Japan essentially took over the void because they're making small cars and quality cars at that. And the American auto industry was in peril for a long time. It all had to do with what we're talking about here, and that's the price of gasoline. And ever since 1973, 50 years now, it's been a nightmare because the prices go up and down and up and down. Best thing we can do, and I noticed what Trump did, and you recall this too, being down in the Gulf of Mexico, is when he said, hey, listen, you know what? The prices are all over the place. If you guys don't get the prices down to our benchmark of $40 to $45 dollars per barrel instead of the 80 where it's at, guess what? You're going to have to start paying for your own military protection. What happened?
Yeah. That's just crazy. Just insane comments, public policy.
Well, it worked though. He said when he went, and it's like, okay, well, then the oil prices went. Okay, well, we'll check the. He threatened them a little bit, but this administration isn't doing that.
What we believe is that when you take a look at all of the inflation that we're experiencing in this country, again, the number one issue when you poll Americans, I guarantee you, your listeners right now, who are experiencing pain at the pump, driving to work, picking up kids across town, bringing them to ball games, senior citizens getting that utility bill in once a month. It's an unforced error. It's an unforced error. It doesn't have to be that way. But don't take my word for it. Let me quote to you an article that came out of the Wall Street Journal on October 25th, 2021. The Wall Street Journal says, most cars still run on gasoline. The way to reduce gas prices is to produce more oil to increase the supply. Mr. Biden wouldn't have to plead with OPEC to produce more if he weren't working so hard to limit U.S. oil production. And that, my friend, is spot on, and that's the Wall Street Journal, October 25th, 2021. Scott, I want to share with you that I feel so strongly about what I'm telling you that I went out and got a phrase trademark because I wanted to be used in an appropriate way. So somehow in this country, the red state became centered around one of the E's, energy. The blue state became centered around another E called the environment. And I think there's a third E. It's not blue, it's not red, it's bright purple. It's called the economy, okay? And I think if we need to balance those three E's, I call it balancing the three E's. And most of us have sat on a bar stool, a three-legged bar stool, and we know what happens when one of those legs gets cut out, right? It topples. That's where we are now. We think we need to have a balanced approach. We all here are in favor of a clean environment, a good environment. We're doing our part, and we believe that American energy is the path. American energy, more, not less, American energy is the path to improving the planet.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, but this is falling on a lot of deaf ears in Washington because we're more concerned about what people do behind closed doors and all this other nonsense, and it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. And once again, Washington fails to serve the people who sent them to D.C. in the first place. I love the three E's. I think that's great. Energy, economy, and environment. The three legs of the stool all together. Scott, Angelle. So the Bengals are going to win the Super Bowl this year. That's what you're going with.
Well, look, let's take something. What we hope for is the New Orleans Saints and the Cincinnati Bengals in the Super Bowl, right? And I tell you what, as much as the folks love their thing there, I'm telling you right now, half of this state is going to be pulling for Cincinnati and Joe Burrow. I mean, the Saints, this state absolutely adores Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow for what they've done here in Louisiana, and then of course just incredible. And you can't help but love you can't help but love Cincinnati. I mean, I grew up as a kid watching the Cincinnati Reds and Johnny Bench, and I think Dave Concepcion was the Joe Morgan, Pete Rose, all those guys. The big red machine there, right?
Yep.
So long history there of a really, really great city, and of course Ohio, one of the most prominent states in our union, both economically and electoral. So we're excited about talking to folks in Cincinnati this morning. And again, we would urge and ask your listeners to take 30 seconds to go to USAEnergyWorkers.com. Very easy. Probably take you 30 seconds to sign up on the petition. Non-political, fact-based. And you're right. When we talk about trying to get people to listen, getting the people inside the Beltway is hard to listen. We're going to take the Ronald Reagan method, and we're going straight to the people. And let's see if we can get the people.
I love it.
Yeah.
You spoke the truth this morning, my friend. Scott Angelle, give my best to the Cajun Navy, and take care. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Scott.
Take care.